Welcome back to the podcast. Today I'm joined by Zara. Zara, how are you?
Good, Jordan. How are you doing?
Good. We're still in Sydney.
We are still in Sydney.
You brought the Melbourne weather with you. It was quite cold this morning.
Yeah, I know. It was a bit fresh.
Today we're talking about what to do in your 20s to run a business in your 30s.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a good one. I think there's a lot of conversations that I have with business owners that they focus on certain things in their 20s, maybe intentionally, maybe not intentionally. But I think with the rise of small business and people wanting to start their own business and have that freedom and flexibility over their life and their earning potential and the way that they kind of shape their career, I think this is a really good and interesting topic
to
dive into.
Agreed.
So maybe, George, what did you do in your 20s? Was there a particular skill set? Was there a particular skill set that you focused on? Did you find yourself kind of jumping between jobs and careers? And yeah.
My first job, I think I was like 14 and I was working in a butcher.
Nice.
Yeah. And then from there, worked in like cafes. What else did I do? Like construction. Actually, when I was in year 11 and 12, I did an apprenticeship. So I'm actually
really?
Yeah, I did.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
In
carpentry.
Qualified? Did you finish? No. How far did you get?
I think second year.
Cool.
So I did that in high school, and then I just did a bridging course to go to uni. And then throughout uni, I worked in accounting ever since then, and I would work at night in a cafe because I travelled heaps in my early 20s and did heaps of silly things. So I used to work at night because the salary was like 35 grand.
Okay.
I worked at night to have enough money to go on holidays. So that's what I did. And then I worked in accounting ever since then.
Great.
So it's been about 10 years now. What about you?
Yeah, similar. I didn't do construction, didn't start an apprenticeship.
You're not an apprentice?
No, I'm not an apprentice. I'm not a chippy. No, but I did do a lot of hospo. I actually kind of shifted around quite a lot. I think would I call it a career journey at that point? I don't know, I guess. But when I finished uni, I thought I wanted to get into science. So I did a degree in science teaching and biochemistry. I lasted a semester and then I went into second semester, walked into physics, the first seminar or the first lecture, and walked out halfway through and was like, nope, not a chance. This isn't for me. And then I changed into a professional and creative writing degree. I thought I wanted to write a book. Or be a journalist. I wasn't quite sure. So I did like playwriting, I did script writing, I did journalism, editing, finished that and was like, I'm not vibing this. And so then I worked in retail for about 5 years. Whilst in retail, I worked at a company called Sunglass Hut and kind of started
chasing people around.
And I started obviously as a casual, then kind of shifted into like a 2IC position. And then I started getting really interested in like visual merchandising and emailed head office and was like, if there's any gigs, I'd love the opportunity. Head office was in Sydney. I would love the opportunity to come and do a little stint and learn. At the same time, I was like, well, I know I don't want to be in retail forever, but I'm not quite sure what I want to do. Visual merchandising kind of falls in the same category of marketing, I think. I don't know. I think I was about 24. And so at the same time, I applied for a grad cert in marketing, just like at RMIT. And my thought was, well, whoever gets back to me first wins. I'll either do the grad cert or I'll do the work experience. And got into the grad cert. It was only for one semester. And I was like, I don't mind this. It's kind of interesting. Consumer psychology, a little bit of market research. At the end of the grad cert, you had the opportunity to turn it into a master's degree and study for another 18 months. So I was like, I don't know what else I'm going to do. I guess I'll do that.
Yeah.
Whilst doing that, I worked in hospo quite a lot. And then I finished my master's degree in marketing. And
how long did that take you?
The marketing degree?
The master's, yeah.
I think it was 2 years.
Full time?
Yes.
Cool.
Yep. And then I finished that and really liked it. And then was like, I think I want to be a naturopath.
Oh, yeah? Really?
Yeah,
wow,
truly.
Okay.
And James, my husband, was like, you are not allowed to study again until you try something.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, fair enough. So I applied for a job in marketing. I'd done like customer kind of online inquiries and stuff in the meantime. Got into a marketing gig, did it for 12 months and I was like, not for me. I'm going to go and do a Master of Primary Teaching. So I started that. I did that throughout COVID whilst working part-time in marketing, and I changed kind of what I was doing at the marketing agency that I was at, kind of shifted more into like an educator kind of role. And I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. I don't know if I want to teach primary school kids anymore.
Yep.
And so I put my primary teaching degree on hold, went back to full-time work in the marketing agency, did that for 18 months. And then my degree was like, okay, you either need to come back and finish. You have 2 subjects left. You either need to come back and finish or you're done. And I was like, I'm done. And so I gave it up. And I had 2 subjects left and I've kind of been in marketing ever since. So my career is like really diverse. Even when I worked in marketing the last couple of years before Inflection that I worked in an agency, I wasn't actually working in marketing. I was working in like people and development and HR. So I think it's just really interesting in that a lot of people think, or particularly young people think, I need to get the job that's going to set me up for life, or I need to get the job that's going to shape my career. And in talking with a lot of other business owners, I've kind of come to the point that it's like, well, you're probably actually going to acquire a lot of skills and knowledge by just trying things out.
Yep.
And then you'll probably figure out where you want to go and what you want to do. And you'll probably come into your own within your 30s and figure out where you can provide the most value.
Yeah, for sure. If you were in marketing right now, what would you be doing?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm still really interested in naturopathy. But I think I've just put it into my hobby space.
Yeah, okay.
And nutrition. So whether it would be like nutrition and dietetics or naturopathy, I've just kind of been like, that's my passion. It's something I'm really interested in, something I self-educate in, but marketing and business consulting is my career.
Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah. What about you? If you weren't an accountant, what would you be doing?
I would be still, and I still want to do this maybe later on in my career, but I want to be involved in the business side of sport. So like I love sport and I'm very passionate about rugby league.
Yep.
And I would love to have some type of role in a rugby league club or even in the NRL. Yeah, that's just a passion.
Yeah.
And I love it.
Cool.
I love sport and I would love to work in the business of sport.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll see how that goes.
I hope you get there.
Me too.
It'd be an interesting kind of...
Yeah, sidestep.
Would you do similar kind of work but in sport, or would you want to do something completely different?
No, like not accounting,
okay,
but like just business in general, maybe like a board role or something like that.
Cool.
I'd love to do that. I have reached out to many people just to say, hey, like I'd love to just learn and just like I don't want to get paid anything, but cicadas.
No dice yet.
I'm not going to name and shame people, but...
Well, maybe anyone that's listening might open it up to you.
Yeah, please.
So what would you call your 20s? If you were to give, I guess if you were to give like decades in your life or decades in your career, colloquial kind of era terms.
Eras. Back on that topic. I think it's about, I don't know, like the 20 to 26 for me was not thinking about any of this. To be honest, it really wasn't. It was just hanging out with friends, going out and traveling, a lot of traveling, really prioritize that. But looking back, well, you know what, I wouldn't change anything, but I feel like my late 20s is where it's sort of like, okay, cool. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And that's when I realized, like, I've always read books ever since I was a kid. And I've always done that through my 20s. And I feel like I learned a lot from that in my early 20s because career and business and whatnot wasn't a priority for me until it was like probably 26 to up until, well, now indefinitely, I guess. But yeah, just reading a lot, trying different things. I think it's really good to try different jobs in different areas or different industries just to get a vibe for how things work, especially if you work corporate. Like I did like intense laboring for months, and it's like you really appreciate what people that do that every day do.
Totally.
But it's a tough gig. So I'm very thankful for doing a lot of labor intensive jobs when I was younger. Yeah. It just really made me appreciate it. What we do now.
Yeah, totally. I think it's I think I would agree. I think my early 20s was just figuring it out, finding myself, finding out what I was interested in. I also did a lot of travel. I was lucky enough to travel probably every 12 to 18 months for,
same.
5 or 6 years, which was great. And I think it was like such a huge part of like knowledge and learning and development.
Yep.
But I think, your 20s is, in my experience, all about like learning, exploring, building those foundations, like your apprenticeship decade almost is nice. what I would call it. And it's just focused on building as much knowledge as you can.
Yep.
And I think that's where you quite often I in my experience in that kind of HR and people and development role, there can be a bit of a focus, particularly for younger people, on earning and how much money you can earn. And I don't know if that's necessarily the best mindset to have, because I think quite often you end up turning down opportunities like that you might learn a huge amount from. And I really think that building as much knowledge and building as much value as possible in that 6 to 8 year period is probably where you end up then being even more valuable in your 30s, where you can have a higher earning potential because you're bringing an really intense skill set.
Yeah. And the learnings don't have to be just for work. Like traveling, you learn so much from traveling.
Absolutely.
There's a whole different type of experience you'll learn there, and the same as working jobs as well. Like for me, working during the day and then going to work at night, like it was just like hard work. And we did that for like 3-4 months because we wanted to travel for 3 months.
Yeah.
So it's really made me appreciate hard work and just getting up every day when you don't want to and go, oh, we go again. It'll be worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I was doing my undergrad degree, my creative writing degree, I was working, also in hospitality at night, like a restaurant, an Italian pizza restaurant, but I was also working in a cafe on weekends.
There you go.
It's just kind of part of it.
Yeah.
And it was just normal because then, you would take 6 or 8 weeks off and go traveling.
No complaints.
In the cheapest way possible.
Yep. I'd do it all again.
I think it's interesting because there was an episode that you and James did a couple of weeks ago, which was all about like Gen Z employees. And one of the conversations you guys were having was that the reality is that most Gen Z employees will have up to 8 careers in their life, which is huge. But it just means that people are kind of potentially coming in with a bunch of different skill sets from a bunch of different industries that could be really valuable. And it's not kind of getting locked into that mindset of, I said I went and studied teaching. I'm a teacher for the next 45 years.
Can we play devil's advocate to that?
Go for it.
So on that example of 8 careers, what is it traditionally? Is it like 2 or 3?
Oh, I'm not sure.
I think it is something like that. Like I could be wrong. But as a business owner, how would you look at that?
It's interesting. I feel like I think it would depend how quickly you were shifting around jobs, because there'd be an element of like loyalty that I would be looking at, being like, okay, well, why are you moving around so much? Is it for a knowledge acquisition, or is it because you get bored really quickly, or job dissatisfaction? So I think it would be, particularly in like the hiring phase, I'd be asking a lot of questions to kind of figure out what the purpose and what the reasoning behind the job changing was. Yeah.
I think if you're in your 20s and you've had 8 career changes, I don't know how I would look at that.
I think it's 8 career changes over your life.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes a bit more sense.
not 8 careers in 8 years.
Whoa. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know, because like I don't know if, like, again, playing devil's advocate.
Yeah.
I would probably look at that and go, well, can you not stick something out for more than 2 or 3 years or 5 years or whatever it is? And it's like a complete career change it's a big call.
Totally.
It's a very big call.
Yeah.
It's not like you're shifting from one area of marketing into another, or same for accounting. It's a big move. So most people change careers at least once in their lives, with more career choices. 30% of the workforce change jobs every year. The average person has 3 to 7 careers in their lifetime. 5 to 7 for upcoming generations.
But I think building that strong foundation in your 20s in terms of like networking is super important. Like building connections with people in a particular industry that you are interested in, whether it's attending events, engaging in online communities, whatever that sort of looks like. Because I think that I know networking can really open up opportunities, and it can open up doors and partnerships that you might not have known existed.
For sure.
And if you can use that as an opportunity to like get a mentor and learn as much as you can from that particular person, then you can kind of, I guess, pass that on.
Yeah. Even on that, with the whole networking thing, like I look back now and all of these connections I made in my 20s, and like now we refer each other work all the time. So it's so important to go out there, meet different people, people that you wouldn't always hang out with. Like, that's very normal. But yeah, like I have a really good network now of professionals where I can go, okay, cool. You have a criminal matter. If a client has a criminal matter, we'll go to this person. If it's a litigation or insolvency matter, we'll go to that person. If it's a finance problem, we'll go to this person. So I think that's really important in network and meeting different people to help with different problems.
What else would you say is part of that strong foundation?
I think having some type of financial literacy is important, and that's in your personal life as well. Like even if you're not a business owner listening to this, it's so important to get a grip on your personal finances. And Owen and Gemma talk about this in the finance podcast. Or it could be the investors podcast. There was an episode I actually listened to of both of them talking through it. It was great. But I think that's really important. Getting some type of baseline understanding of really good financial habits and having a really good baseline understanding, if you're a business owner, of the tax system. Just like basic stuff, payroll, how does that work? Your BAS, what's included, your tax return, cool. That way you can have a two-way conversation with your accountant. And I think also in your 20s, it's really important to try and not let, I just think in life, to be honest, not to let lifestyle creep happen as your income goes up.
Explain that a bit more.
Lifestyle creep. So like if you're making an extra $30,000, whether it's buying a nicer car or spending more things, like as your income goes up, you just spend more.
Yes.
Getting on top of that, I think, is important too, and being able to identify, okay, cool, this is happening. I need to stop doing that. Because it happens all the time.
What would be some tips, or how would you say, what's a good way to do that? I guess budgeting is obviously the first way, and recognizing when that increase in salary happens, what are you doing with the rest of the, you go from 60 grand to 90 grand. What is that? I know that's a pretty massive jump.
Yeah.
Good on you. But say that happens, and maybe it happens incrementally over the space of kind of 5 years or something, where that extra cash is going.
Owen speaks about this all the time. You need to have a budget. You just need to have a budget, and you need to stick to it, and allocate money for your holidays and discretionary spending, all good. But you just don't want to get to the point where you're making like that. Let's use that jump as an example. And it's 30 grand, and say it's an extra, I don't know, 20 grand in your pocket. You don't want to just be splurging on materials. I guess everyone's, do whatever you want, but you don't want to just be splurging every time your income goes up. And whether it's income or you run a business and your profit's gone up, you don't want to just be necessarily ripping the money out of the business to buy lifestyle things. But look, if that's what you want to do, good on you.
I think it's interesting.
You do you.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too. I think budgeting kind of has like a negative connotation to it. And I think it's probably because quite often people assume budgeting involves sacrifice. When I think it's like it just kind of allows you to identify opportunities. So James and I, we have a budget. We essentially categorize all of our spending into different kind of buckets. And we say, okay, well, what are our non-negotiables? What are our kind of flexible things? What are the things that we should cut back on? What are the things we're saving for, whether that be a holiday, whatever, maybe you're saving for a house. What does that look like? How much money do you want to put aside? How long do you want to be saving for? When do you want to enter the housing market? All these kinds of things. Like you kind of can't just sit there and be like, I'm 25, I want to own a house by the time I'm 30, or I want to, buy an apartment when I'm 32 or whatever. You have to plan for that. And how do you plan for that? You budget for that. Yeah,
it's interesting, and it's a whole different topic of conversation, but you see in the media that, it's so hard for people to purchase properties. And it is. I'm not saying that it's not.
Yeah.
But are you doing everything in your power to purchase a property? Are you doing the budgeting? Yeah. Are you working 60 hours a week or 70 hours a week? Because if that's the goal, then you're not going to get there coasting. It's always been hard. I look back at my grandparents and using that as an example, like they would work 80 hours a week for like 20 years.
Yeah.
And like if you do that now, like that's 2 salaries. It could be 180 grand, whatever the numbers are. It's just about what you want in life, to be honest. And if that's the goal, then you've got to be prepared to work hard.
Yeah, I think it is interesting. I think, you know, obviously, like you said, there are stats around on average, the cost of a house is like, is it between like 12 and 16 times like the average Australian income or something crazy per
Sydney,
capita.
it's probably a bazillion times the average income.
But I think it's kind of between like 12 and 16 times like the average household income, which is bonkers.
Craziness.
And it is really difficult. But I guess what we're saying is like, we're not saying you can earn a house if you do, but you can buy a house if you have a budget. It's like,
is that you doing my voice?
Yes. But it's just, I think it's just about discipline, perseverance. And like, I think all of this kind of falls into your 20s. Obviously this house ownership thing, it is like a controversial conversation at the moment. And there is a reality that there is a cost of living crisis going on, and we're not denying that, absolutely. But yeah, I think it's just about in your 20s, what can you be doing to educate yourself in the most effective way possible so that when you're in your 30s, you can, you know, obviously in this particular situation, it's a business podcast, so we're talking about running a business, but what can you be doing in your 20s to cultivate that really strong work ethic, lifestyle ethic, understanding, knowledge base, financial literacy to do the best that you possibly can in your 30s? Yeah,
I agree. And that's that house example that I just gave. It's about the work ethic in business more so, because if you expect to work 40 hours a week and do the bare minimum and maximize your profit or maximize your turnover, it's just not going to happen. Like, especially in those early stages where it's just you, it'd be easier to just continue to do your 9 to 5 or whatever 7 to 3, whatever it is, because it does get tough. But that's why when we spoke about that in a previous episode, it's about purpose, because it's those days where it's like, that's why I'm doing it. That's why I'm doing my thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, you know, in the examples that we gave of like what we did in our 20s, it's like you kind of have, because you don't really have responsibilities in that, generally speaking, the type of responsibilities you have is probably much lower, and the type of risks that you can take is you can take more risks when you're in your 20s. When you're 23, you can take a risk. You can afford to go on a holiday for 6 weeks and not have a job. But when you're in your 30s or your 40s or your 50s and you've got like dependents, and you've got a, you know, mortgage, and you've got a business and family and all these other kind of components, you can't afford to take those risks.
Yeah,
so I think like another part of what you can do in your 20s is take as many risks as you possibly can, whether that be through changing jobs, whether that be through, you know, trialing things, traveling, moving states, moving cities, whatever that looks like, because it gets a lot harder.
I always wanted to do that.
Where?
In America. Go to like college in America.
Ah.
I thought that was really cool.
Cool.
But I never did.
Would you want to do like would you want to live in America for a stint?
Nope.
Was that what you Did you want to back then?
Yeah, for like a few months, for like 6 months, to like a semester.
Yeah.
But never did. I don't know if I'm sure you remember, in the early 2000s, there was always those like college movies.
Yeah.
And like I saw them, I was like, oh, that's so cool.
That's what I want to do.
Yeah. But, you know, all those movies have been cancelled now.
Yeah.
We won't talk about that.
Yeah. I didn't do a long stint overseas, but I did do a subject as part of my creative writing degree. We did a subject overseas. It was like a intensive, it was like 6 weeks, 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks was overseas, and the other 2.5 weeks was back home, like research. And, but yeah, we went to Washington, Boston and New York, and we stayed in colleges, in college dorms, and had kind of that college experience.
So cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. It was a really cool opportunity. I think at the time I was, I've been 22.
So you could drink?
Sorry, no, I couldn't. I must have been 20.
I was 21, right?
Yes, 21 you can drink. So sorry, no, I was 20. But yeah, it was still an awesome opportunity, like traveling around. It was, you know, you applied for it. Everyone had to apply to get into the course. Obviously heaps of people applied, because why wouldn't you? Yeah. It was an additional cost.
Could you put it on your HECS?
I think so.
Yeah, because I think I looked into it at UTS and you could.
Yeah, I think so. Wow. So it was like the uni that I was at, it was Deakin Uni. And yeah, it was like I can't even remember what the course was called. I just remember going to like Salem and Boston and like Cambridge University and
college, man.
And in New York, we stayed at like the Fashion Institute of Technology.
Oh, cool.
And, yeah, it was sick. And like there was like learning, obviously classes. We went and did a whole bunch of different stuff. Went to other universities, went to lectures, but there was also a whole bunch of free time, which 20 in America was sick.
Oh, yeah.
It was great.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
We digress.
Yeah, we do quite a bit.
Dreams.
I think we're going to do.
But yeah, good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in your 20s to go back to what we were talking about before, just try as many things as you can. And we're not saying be reckless and anything bad.
Of course.
But try as many things as you can. Start a side hustle, whether it's freelancing or whatever it is. Because back when I was in my early 20s, and I'm not sure about you, but like it wasn't a thing. Like a side hustle was not a thing.
No.
Freelancing wasn't a thing. You just went to work, you got a job, and that was it. There wasn't any of this stuff. And now I feel like it's everywhere. Like I watch heaps of YouTube, and there's a few people I like to watch to just learn things. Yeah. And it's like all of these people, side hustle this, side hustle that. Like, dude, if you're again, devil's advocate, unpopular opinion, but like if you're 22, what service like could you be offering that you've what's the word I'm looking for, that you have mastered? Yep. So I think that's like a bit of devil's advocate, but you just want to make sure that you can, learn as much as you can in all different areas. Yep.
Yeah, I think it's learning over earning.
Yeah.
Is a key thing. And again, just focusing on not which job gives you the most money. Is there a 5 or 10K difference between job A and job B? But what job promises the most learning, has the most learning opportunities, has the ability to, be a mentee of someone in the organization? What sort of experiences are out there that you can be, I guess, self-discovering and developing skills?
It was one of the first, my first boss from a professional standpoint, so as an accountant, he always said that. It's like, don't worry about the money. The money will always come. You just need to master your skill set. Yeah,
absolutely. Because if you master your skill set and you spend a decade doing that, you might not have earned as much in that decade as someone that went and did something else and only focused on the cash. But what you can do in your 30s, like you said, the financial reward is probably going to be there and maybe going to be there for longer. You might not necessarily hit a ceiling because you have learned so much. And then I think the other part is like you've also developed a mindset, like you've cultivated this learning mindset within yourself that you've been so interested in learning for so long that it's something that you continue to do for the rest of your life. Yeah, I agree.
You see as well, like, escape the 9 to 5 and you don't want to just be working for someone for like the next 40 years. But like there's nothing wrong with that. Like I think the way that some people portray it is just so wrong.
I think there's so many benefits to being an employee. Yeah. So many benefits. You have
guaranteed income. Yeah. Guaranteed sick days.
Absolutely.
Guaranteed annual leave. Yeah. Superannuation gets paid. Career progression. There could be travel opportunities that could arise. You could relocate if you want to relocate. I just think that I see a lot of it where it's like spoken bad about, but I couldn't disagree more. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. There's no right or wrong way of doing it, whether it is to work for someone or to do your own thing. Like both are fantastic.
Both are fantastic, and you learn so much from both of them, and you can be just as passionate about both of them.
Yeah, for sure.
And you can be just as valuable in an organization.
Probably more working for someone, to be honest.
Truly, yeah.
If you've really mastered that skill set over 10, 20 years, name your price.
Yeah. I think, just like you said, just kind of like seeking experiences and investing in personal and professional development.
For sure. I think that's a really important one. Yeah. Even if you do work for someone, it's continuously investing in your personal and professional development, whether it's soft skills or hard skills, you just want to be constantly improving. Yeah.
And I think a lot of organizations now have learning development opportunities for their employees because they understand the importance of it. They understand how the company benefits from somebody learning and developing their skill set, how that drives loyalty within an organization, but also how that drives job satisfaction as well. Because at the end of the day, you don't want to be sitting there doing the same thing day after day after day after day. But if you have the opportunity to learn and develop a new skill and potentially try something, even if you don't end up pursuing it, but if you have the ability to try something in an organization, your job satisfaction is going to go up.
For sure.
So I think there's a lot of opportunities out there that you can essentially work within an organization, work on someone else's dime, and really align and identify what your passions are, what truly excites you, what you're interested in, what you're good at, I think as well. Like if you spend a pretty serious amount of time really diving into like your strengths and what you do really, really well, just hone in on that. And if it's something that you're passionate about, then just push forward with that learning and development in that area.
something that we talk about all the time on the podcast is like getting off the tools per se, whatever your tools are, as soon as you can from a business perspective. But you also want to make sure that you've really mastered it.
Yeah.
Like you need to make sure your service offering is there. And whether you do that through yourself and upskilling yourself, or you hire people that have more experience than you, it's really important that that is always front of mind. And I think I spoke about it in a previous episode where it's like sales, focus on bringing in work. And like, yeah, fantastic. But you need to make sure you're also focusing on service delivery, because if that's not there, everything's going to blow up. So that's why I think it's so important to master your craft, whatever your craft is.
I think you kind of hit the nail on the head too, that if you are a business owner, like don't be afraid of hiring someone smarter than you. Like that's what you should
100%.
be. That's exactly, if I can find someone that can do something that I can't and can educate me, number one, you get the job because you're obviously filling a gap in the organization that I can't fill.
For sure.
You're adding value that I can't provide. And I'm learning. Again, I'm so interested in learning. So it's such a huge component. So I think, hiring people that are smarter than you, that are better than you, that can do things that you can't do is just the way.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of people also see that, well, not a lot of people, but some people can see that as a threat.
Yeah.
I just don't think that's the right mindset.
Yeah.
I really don't. I'm all for hiring people with more experience than myself.
Yeah. It's interesting, as you sort of were mentioning earlier about side hustles, and you know, it is something that there's just so much more noise about now. And it's so easy to start a side hustle, and it's so easy to do freelance and create a small business. It's really hard. Yes, anyone can kind of do a side hustle, but for it to be profitable and to scale and grow is really, really challenging. But how could someone start? If you were in a position where you're like, I want to give it a go, what would you recommend?
I'll use myself as an example. When starting Grayspace, we had a couple of clients that I would just work on the side, just after hours. Get yourself out there. They were always from referrals. And from that, it grew. But I always knew I wanted to have my own business and not be a freelancer. But when we started, I always thought like freelancing and whatnot was sort of like you're just like a subcontractor. Like in the trade space where you essentially are working for someone else, but you're just on a higher hourly rate. That's just my opinion. I always knew I wanted to build a business. And I think if that's your mindset from the start, it's a bit different to a side hustle, in my opinion. Because a side hustle is like something you do while you're working full time. Is it?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because I think there's a little bit of I'm a bit of column A, column B. I think that side hustles, if it's something like in your instance, you know, you want to kind of start a business, I think a side hustle or like a freelance project is a great way to start. I mean, that's kind of how I started. Was I was working full time in a really intense position. At one point I was like, don't want to do this anymore. I'm just going to go part-time. So I went part-time, took a huge pay cut. I think it was like a 40% pay cut. Went and started working 3 days a week, and took the time to just kind of like figure out what I wanted to do. Like I was like, I don't know what I want to do. I actually took a step back in my career and started doing work that I was doing probably like 3 years ago. But it just gave me like the mental space to be like, all right, what's next for me? From there, I was like, okay, I think I don't know what I want to do, but I know that in a similar vein, I knew I wanted to do something for myself. Whether that was to develop it into a bigger picture business or just run like a small business and have people that I outsourced work to, I wasn't too sure. So I started freelance and I started doing like 1 or 2 little projects on the side. I kind of networked. And then it got to a point where I was like, okay, I think I believe in this enough and I believe in myself enough that can turn it into a business. And then I kind of like took that leap. But I think it was like, I didn't jump in with both feet. I think that was probably like a key thing, and maybe a lesson that I would recommend to people is like, if you are interested, unless you have the capacity, like the financial capacity to potentially sustain you for 6 to 12 months, if you don't actually hit, you know, your financial kind of goals that you need to hit or whatever. But I think if you can test the waters, like dip your toe in there, try a little bit, get that kind of like positive feedback and like positive recognition that it's working, and then do a bit more and a bit more. And then when you're at a point where you're like, okay, this is like, it's a self-sustaining organism now, I can take that leap. it's almost like allows you to have a little bit more confidence in what you're doing.
Agreed.
Okay, maybe people have kind of hit the point where we're at. We're just talking about that side hustle and maybe kind of that next step. Maybe they're at the point where they've identified that this is a viable, project or a viable pathway.
Sure.
What's next? What do you do?
I remember when we started, Daniel and I were sitting at his dining table and we're like costing it all out. And we're like, oh man, so much money. Like, how are we going to do this? And we didn't have that much revenue, and budgeting, it was the first thing we did. Before strategy, before marketing, it was like, okay, well, can we afford to buy the laptops? Can we afford the software? If this is what our income is going to be for the first 2 months. Yeah. Well, no, we couldn't, but we did it anyway.
Okay.
Did you and I've still got that spreadsheet.
That's so interesting.
No, I think we contributed about $5,000 each, maybe $10,000 each. Yeah. I've still got that spreadsheet, and we just did it. Yeah. We planned it out. It's like, cool, we'll be good for a few months. If we take no money, we'll be good for like 3 months. Yep. So we've got 3 months to work it out and get more clients, because we had a few clients, but not much. I don't think it was enough to, I don't think it was enough to cover the expenses for the first month or two. So we'd be running at a small loss, but we just did it anyway. Yeah. So just plan, have a plan. A budget first is the most important thing. And then once the budget's in place, make sure you have some type of plan to bring work in. Yeah. That's the two main things. Yeah. And then focus on quality too, because that's important. But at the start, it's just about getting the cash in the door.
Yeah. I think also like researching competition out there and researching the industry is really important. Obviously, you have a skill set, but how can you tap into a market where your skill set is as valuable as possible?
Yes.
Is there like a hidden potential somewhere that you can really leverage? And it's a skill set that you've already developed, but maybe it's not as accessible in a particular industry or a particular market as it is in another. How can you tap into that market that there is less competition?
Agreed. And also put money aside.
Yes.
Like if you're planning to do it in 12 months,
start
whatever you can afford, $150 a week.
Yep.
Put money aside, because it is expensive and things always come up that you don't budget for, like always. So just be very conscious of that too.
Yep. And I think that's kind of where a mentor can be really handy as well in this. Obviously, once you are thinking about taking the leap, but even then once you've taken that leap, if you've got someone to just bounce ideas off, we talk about it all the time. Like we have each other, the four of us, so we can kind of round table things, but otherwise it can be really stressful and it can be really lonely. And so if you've got a mentor or you've got another community, or like you're lucky to have like a group of friends you go out with every Friday and you talk things through, just someone else outside of yourself that can provide an alternative perspective, because things are going to get tough. There's going to be challenges. There's going to be problems that you need to try and solve. And sometimes it's better to have an external party commenting on it.
Yep, I agree. And look, you can tell people, or you can talk to your friends about it, but if your friends aren't in business, they're not going to know. So you want to make sure you're talking to other business owners and people that have walked your shoes before. And that's, me personally, lucky to have that with the four of us and a really good network of friends. Yeah. Every Friday we catch up. Happy birthday, Si. It's his birthday.
Today?
Yeah, it was
happy birthday,
yesterday.
Si. Oh, happy birthday for yesterday, Si.
He loves his new nickname.
Does he though?
No. But we're going to stick with it.
Yeah.
But just try and speak to people that have already walked that path. I think that's a big summary for me.
Yeah. I think that's great. I think it's really hard to cover. This is such a broad topic. And again, it's mostly based on our experience, obviously, what we've talked about. There's a lot of different journeys out there. There's a lot of different ways that people have done it. We're not saying our way is the best way. We're just saying this is the way that we've done it.
We could be wrong.
We could be wrong. There's no doubt.
If we're not here next week, we're wrong.
But yeah, I think it's just in our experience, learning over earning, taking those risks. Essentially, make your 20s your apprenticeship decade. Learn as much as you can, provide as much value as you can, and learn how to provide as much value.
That's so true.
Build those skills, build that knowledge.
Calculated risks.
Yeah.
Just make sure they're calculated.
Yeah.
I use another example of when we reached out to Owen, and then we're on a plane that week, accommodation, that was like $1,500. And did we have $1,500 to spend? Oh, there wouldn't have been that much more than that in the bank account at the time.
Yeah.
But we just did it. Cool. Let's do it.
Yep.
Fast decision. And now it's one of the greatest decisions we've made in business, to be honest. It really is.
Yeah.
So very thankful for that. But be smart about the decisions that you make.
Yeah. And I think even like to touch on that as well, like, and my experience coming and meeting you guys was I was working part-time for another company and I worked 3 days a week and then I had 2 particular days off. The day that I was coming to meet you guys wasn't a day that I had off. So I just negotiated an alternative day. I didn't have sick leave. I didn't have annual leave. So I just didn't get paid. And I was like, I'm just going to go to Sydney, meet these guys, these 2 guys, have dinner with them and talk about starting a business.
Yeah. Me and Owen were talking about
look where we are now.
finance and you're like looking at the roof.
Truly.
Do you remember that?
Straight over my head.
Then we're like, oh, sorry, Zara. Let's talk about business.
Yeah. Well, I think we were sitting out for lunch and you guys were having this really intense conversation. I was like, whoa, I have no idea. This is not my zone. But being exposed to it now, I feel like it's opened my eyes and I'm much more interested in those conversations. Yeah. Not that I necessarily, I'm the first to admit, I don't necessarily understand all of them, but it's an interesting conversation to be a part of and to learn. That's just another opportunity for me to be like, cool, there's a skill set that I haven't nailed. Listen as much as I can.
It's just about taking, like, again, say it again and again, just taking those risks, like coming to Sydney to meet Dan and I and Owen.
Yeah.
Cool. That following week, done. This is what we're doing.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Here we are.
And like I'd met Owen once at a dinner party.
Yeah. Work that out.
Yeah. Any final thoughts?
Just give it a go. Give it a go. Don't be afraid to be wrong.
Totally.
And if you fall on your face, it's always a learning experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
What about you? What are your final words?
Yeah, I think I said it in a previous episode, but if you're going to fall forward. Yes. Don't make a decision. And I know it's much harder said than done, but if you decide to take a step, but you have a fallback plan or you have a plan B, you're never fully going to commit to that plan A because you know you've got a safe option to fall back onto.
For sure.
Which is what I did, if you just cut and go, I'm all in and I understand the risks and they're calculated risks and measured risks and I know I can take these risks, then just give it a go. And if you fail, fall forward. But at least you've tried something, you've probably gained something. You don't give up any sooner than you need to. And maybe you kind of do the grunt work a little bit more and you put in a little bit more effort because you're like, oh, I need to make this work. I really want to make this work because I can't go back to teaching or admin or, trades or whatever it might be because this is what I'm doing now.
For sure. If you don't have a mentor or there's no one to talk to, we're running a free Techspert session in our free community. Link will be in the show notes.
Yes.
All you have to do is sign up to get a Circle account.
Yep.
And we'll have our call on the 20th of March, I believe. And you'll be able to ask myself, Zara, Daniel, and Owen anything about business or Zara's one semester of college, which I didn't get to do.
One subject of college.
But yeah, jump in, ask your questions, whether it's business or personal. You can even pick Owen's brain for finance questions.
And if you've listened to this episode and there's something that we've said that you're like, hey, I didn't do that and it worked out for me, tell us. Because again, like we said, this is just based on us. It's based on 2 people and the experience of 2 people getting to where we are now. If you have a different experience, let us know because then we'd love to share it. Maybe we can get you on the podcast because you're obviously doing something that we haven't done.
Reach out, jump on the potty.
We would love to talk to you. We'd love to share your story.
Sounds good.
Thanks, George.
Good stuff. Thanks, Zara.
Thanks for watching this video on the Rask Network. While you're here, don't forget to like and subscribe so you can get videos each and every day on business, finance, investing, and so much more.